Hey, sixth grade, seventh grade, my wonderful honors students, I wanted to walk through Act 2, Scene 1 a little bit to make it easier when it came to the questions I'm going to be assigning you. So hopefully you'll watch this or at least watch the PowerPoint and um, you'll get a little bit more insight. This is a really funny scene because, um, well, there's a lot of funny things in it, but more importantly, this is where Shakespeare really differed from the original play, The Menechmi, that Comedy of Errors was based on. Remember, there were two things that he did differently. The first was adding the second set of twins in the servants and the Dromios in this case, and also by adding the confusion aspect of one of the twins, Antipholus of Ephesus, being married. So if you remember in the previous scene, Dromio of Ephesus is trying to get Antipholus to come home for dinner, but of course, him being Antipholus of Syracuse, he has no idea what he's talking about, and he's super grumpy with Dromio because he thinks, of course, that it's his Dromio who is supposed to be waiting for him with the money at the inn. And the only money that Dromio seems to know about is the money that he paid for a bridal. So he starts beating Dromio, says, I don't know anything about a wife. Get out of here. Now I'm worried that you lost my money. And so Dromio, one presumes, has fled for his life, or at least to protect his skin. And then the scene shifts to the Centaur, which is the home of Antipholus of Ephesus, where we see Antipholus's wife and sister, who, as we learned again in the previous scene, have been waiting very patiently and very hungrily for Antipholus to return. So let's look at this next scene. There's an important dynamic that comes up between Luciana, or Luciana, depending on how you pronounce it, and Adriana. The relationship between these two is similar to the relationship between Antipholus of Syracuse and Dromio. If you remember, Antipholus of Syracuse had said that his Dromio is a kindly villain who cheers him up when he is depressed or upset or having a hard time. In a similar way, because Luciana is a much more chill person, she has that same, or at least attempts to have that same soothing effect on Adriana. The important difference, of course, is that Antipholus and Dromio are master and servant, and they are also the same age, whereas Luciana and Adriana are sisters. Adriana is older than Luciana, and as we've already said, Adriana is married to Antipholus. And so if you look at the scene, we see Adriana says, neither my husband nor the slave returned, that in such haste I sent to seek his master. Sure, Luciana, it is 2 o'clock. So we add this extra thing. It was an hour ago when we had the scene between Antipholus and Dromio, where he said it was 1 o'clock. Now it's 2 o'clock. So, no, they've been waiting a very long time. And so, of course, Adriana is super concerned. Luciana seems a little bit less bothered. She simply says, perhaps some merchant hath invited him, and from the mart he's gone somewhere to dinner. Good sister, let us dine and never fret. So even though she's been waiting all this time, she's completely forgiving and says, maybe, he forgot. Maybe someone invited him to dinner, so let's just eat without him. Then she doubles down and gets into a major theme, which is the role of men and women. And she says, a man is master of his liberty. Time is their master, and when they see time, they'll go or come. If so, be patient, sister. So according to Luciana, the only master that men have is time. They are in complete control of their own lives and destiny. Whereas on the other side, you have Luciana, who wouldn't even consider eating without her husband there. And so Adriana asks the question, why should their liberties than ours be more? And so that is, right, that leads to that first question, which is, why is Luciana less upset? What is her attitude about the role of men? And so we get that hint there, right? The role of men, think about who is their master compared to women. And Adriana says, why should their liberty than ours be more? Why should they have more freedom than we do? And Luciana says, because their business still lies out of door. Adriana responds, when I serve him so, he takes it ill. A little bit of a double standard there. And Luciana says, no, he is the bridle of your will. And as the note over here mentions, we have a lot of references to animals, specifically horses or other beasts of burden, who are and about control and bridling, which of course is what you put on a horse or a donkey or whatever. And Luciana responds to that saying, there's none but asses would be bridled so. So what does Adriana think of the kind of person who would let themselves be controlled the way, in fact, she seems to have been letting Antipholus control her up to now, so she seems to have reached her breaking point. And Luciana says, headstrong liberty, headstrong means willful, controlling, is lashed with woe. There's nothing situate under heaven's eye but hath its bound in earth, in sea, in sky. So everything in the world and above the world, right, and under the world, right, has a limit, has a boundary, right? And she continues bringing that first in nature and then into the animal kingdom. The birds, the fishes, and the winged fowls are their master's subjects and at their controls. So even in the animal kingdom, the female of any animal, and of course we know that's not true, in fact, in all parts of the animal kingdom, but this is Shakespeare's time, right? Are there male subjects and at the controls? Even anywhere in the animal kingdom, the male of the species is superior, or at least in control of the female of the species. Man, more divine, okay, kind of getting that biblical reference that supposedly right, God put man above the animals to be controlling of them. Right? Man more divine, the master of all these, Lord of the wide world and the wide watery seas, endued with more intellectual sense and soul. So that is why man has control, because he's given greater intellectual ability, right? Our master to their females and their lords. Then let your will attend on their accords. So that goes back to the next question over here, which is, sorry about that. Why is, according to Luciana, why are men the one in control? And it's interesting, backtracking for a second, right, that Luciana is the one who seems to be the more forgiving, the more understanding of men kind of doing whatever they want. But of course, she's the one who's not married. So think about answer, right? What does the fact that Adriana does not or no longer has that attitude show or hint or foreshadow about the relationship that she and Antipholus seem to have? So Luciana, as we've already seen, right, basically says, let your husband kind of do whatever he wants. And Adriana kind of pushes the envelope, and you'll read this scene, but focusing specifically on this part, Adriana says, how if your husband starts some other where? And if you look at the the line of the translation here, right? What if your husband strayed elsewhere, which is of course a very tactful way of saying, what if he cheated on you, right? In every other way, she's saying, oh, I'd be, right, I'd be submissive, I'd let my husband do what he wants. And according to Luciana, even if her husband cheated, right, what would she do? Right? Till he come home again, I would forbear. Think about what that means. And Adriana is not buying this. And she says, patience unmoved, no marvel though she pause. They can be weak that have no other cause. So you can be weak when you don't have a reason why you have to be, when it's your choice to be or not be. A wretched soul bruised with adversity, we bid be quiet when we hear it cry. When we see someone else suffering, when we see another soul crying out, we tell it to be quiet. Right? But were we burdened with the like weight of pain, if we were in that situation, as much or more we should ourselves complain. So thou, and this speaks to the answer to question number 6, so thou that hast no unkind mate to grieve thee, with urging helpless patience would relieve me. And of course, you can look back at the lit chart to see exactly what that means. So thou that hast no unkind mate to grieve thee, with urging helpless patience would relieve me. But if thou live to see like right bereft, if you were in my situation, this full begged patience in thee will be left. So if you actually found yourself in my situation, your patience, the only fools have, would pretty much go right out the window, and this full begged patience would be left. All right, so, right, and the scene, of course, goes on where Luciana kind of humors Adriana and says, well, we'll see what happens when I get married. Maybe you're right. And finally, he's back. Dromio of Ephesus, right, eventually returns. And I wanted to point out that even though Adriana and Luciana seem very different, and we have yet to see whether Antipholus of Syracuse and Antipholus of Ephesus are similar, Dromio of Ephesus is very much like his brother. They're a stocked character. They both play the role of the jester, that common role that we see in most of Shakespeare's plays, and especially his comedies. So she says, right, is your tardy master now at hand? Which of course means, is he coming soon? And Dromio says, nay, he's at 2 hands with me, and that my 2 ears can witness. Right? So there's lots of puns here with hands and minding and feeling and different things. I'm not going to make you understand all of them, but I want you to look, right. She says, is he at hand? And he responds saying, he's at 2 hands with me. And after he goes on to say he has no idea why Antipholus is acting the way he is, he follows up and says, why, mistress, sure my master is horn mad. And I hope we'll be able to get a chance to watch this, because Adriana goes kind of ballistic and starts beating Dromio for saying that, because horn mad, again, and this is something that kind of has that high comedy, low comedy thing. People in Shakespeare's time would have known that horn mad could mean mad like a crazy bull, but it could also mean a cuckold. It was sort of traditionally believed that when you cheated or when you were cheated on, you grew horns like a bull. And so Adriana obviously is not appreciative of Dromio's comment. And then there's sort of this rapid fire exchange between Luciana and Dromio kind of reenacts the conversation he had with Antipholus, which is a little bit different than the way we originally read the scene. But again, with the video, you see that he right, kind of has some back and forth. I'm going to read it, but I would love you to try and read it aloud for yourself as well. Where he comes down here and he says, when I desired him to come home to dine, he asked me for 1,000 marks in gold. 'Tis dinner time, quoth I. My gold, quoth he. Your meat doth burn, quoth I. My gold, quoth he. Will you come, quoth I? My gold, quoth he. Where is the 1,000 marks I gave thee, villain? The pig, quoth I, is burned. My gold, quoth he. My mistress, sir, quoth I. Hang up thy mistress, I know not thy mistress, out on thy mistress. And out, in Shakespearean terms, is basically saying your mistress can go to hell. Because he has no idea who his mistress is. And notice it's Luciana who says, quoth who? Right, this whole rest of the time, Adriana's been doing all the talking. But you can imagine Adriana's reaction when she sees and hears Dromio saying, yeah, he just said he has no idea who you are. He just said, what mistress? And so Dromio says, quoth my master, I know, quoth he, no house, no wife, no mistress. So that my errand due unto my tongue, I thank him I bore home on my shoulder. So I brought the message, right, on my tongue with my words, and I came back, right, with his message written, right, on my shoulders because of the marks from the beating. And so the right, the next question, right, asks, what does Adriana order Dromio to do? And he's not excited about this idea because obviously thinks he's looking forward to being beaten again. And so she threatens to do something if he refuses, and he responds with a pun, and I don't want to spoil it. We'll definitely get into an explanation afterwards, but I want you to think it's a Christian pun. It's a Jesus pun, if you will. And she says, fetch thy prating master home. He compares himself to a football in this line where he says, right, am I so round with you as you with me, that like a football you do spurn me thus. Remember, football here is a soccer ball. So basically, he says, you spurn me hence, he will spurn me hither. He feels like he's just kind of getting kicked around, which so far it seems to be true. And so he leaves, and Luciana says, how impatience lowereth in your face. And Adriana is miserable. She's absolutely convinced that Antipholus must be cheating on her, right? His company must do his minions grace while I at home starve for a merry look. And then in this speech right here, she lists 3 or 4 different reasons why Antipholus is sick of her. And for each of them, she blames Antipholus. She says, I'm this, but it's his fault. I don't have this, but it's his fault. And then she says, right, my decayed fair, a sunny look of his would soon repair. So I have all these things, I've lost all these things, but all he has to do is look on me with love, and I would be beautiful and fabulous and amazing and interesting again. And Luciana's like, you're losing it. You're being jealous. You don't have any proof. But she says, I know his eye doth homage otherwhere, or else what lets it but he would be here, right? He must be cheating, otherwise why isn't he here? And she finishes up, convinced with our last question, with something that Antipholus had promised Adriana, that in Adriana's mind would prove that he still loves her. And then there's a final question in the very end of her speech. The question is, does she think that she will get the thing that Antipholus had promised her? So I hope that's helpful, and please feel free to email me with any questions. You guys are amazing, and I will talk to you later.